Welcome to Psalm 62. I want to share with you quick the binding of my book. You can see that it's really starting to get puffy. I'm about halfway, maybe not halfway through the book yet, but you can see how that binding is really taking a beating. So my secret so far is that surgical tape that I put down on each and every spread. Each and every 2 pages, I put that surgical tape down. It's paper surgical tape. And then I put one layer of clear gesso on top of that to really hold it down. I don't know if the whole book is going to make it, but as of Psalm 62 right now, the book is getting fatter, but the binding is holding together and keeping all the pages intact. So that's all I can update with right now. But that so far is my secret to the binding. So Psalm 62 is just an unbelievable. Is just an unbelievable psalm to me. It was so beautiful. If I could read it to you, there's twice he says this. David says this just in verses 1 through 6. So in six lines, what verses? He says this twice. So you know that we've got to pay attention, right? So I stand silently to listen for the one I love. I'm just going to read it first and then just share my thoughts. I stand silently to listen for the one I love, waiting as long as it takes for the Lord to rescue me. For God alone has become my Savior. He alone is my safe place. His wraparound presence always protects me, for He is my champion defender. There's no risk of failure with God. So why would I let worry paralyze me, even when troubles multiply around me? So looking back, that's verse 1 and 2 from the Passion Translation. I stand silently to listen for the one I love. How often do we stand silently before the presence of God? How often do we just listen for the one that we love and hear what he has to say rather than chatter about what we want and how we need it to play out and our demands? And we act like God is our genie in a bottle and we tell him exactly how we need something to play out, and we get mad at him when it doesn't play out the way that we need it to. So that we put ourselves in the position of God and we put him in the position of genie in a bottle. How often do we just stand silently and listen for the one that we love? I'm going to say in my life, I know that most of the times I'm chattering and I'm not listening. I chatter my incessant list of demands to my Father like a spoiled child. I wait as long as it takes for the Lord to rescue me. I know that there have been seasons that I cannot even imagine that the seasons went on as long as they did. But in that time and in that space, how do we keep our eyes fixed on him? How do we keep our eyes on the one that we love and not let the circumstances and the fear and the ill health and the worry and how do we let that not take us out at our knees? I think we go back to the stanza before. I stand silently to listen for the one that I love. Because the fact of the matter is we know through our Psalms that he's always talking to us. He's always sharing his promises with us. He's always reminding us who he is and how faithful he is. But sometimes I think we just have to hush so that he can get through our chatter and our mental clutter so that we can hear the promises that he sings over us. For God alone has become my Savior. Is God alone my Savior? I mean, that's the question. Is God alone my Savior? Or do I find help, try to find help in other things? He alone is my safe place. His wraparound presence always protects me. So when I was figuring out this vision came right away, his wraparound presence, because it's sort of a play on the word presence. So presence as in a gift, as in presence, as in a somebody walking with you. So his wraparound presence always protects me. I pray that when you're going through a trial and you're going through a tough time, that you would just think of this little gift and you would be remembered that his wraparound presence does protect you. If you stand silently before him and you wait for him to lead the way out of the valley, he will. He just certainly will. I love this. I'm on verse 2. There's no risk of failure with God. I think that speaks to us on every conceivable level, that there's no risk of failure with God. Why would I let worry paralyze me? worry. I think so many times where if we've got mindless chatter going on in our heads of how we're going to fix things and what we're going to do and how we can get out of our circumstances rather than standing in his presence to listen for the one that we love, do we sometimes let worry paralyze us? That's like the flip side of that coin, is that worry can absolutely paralyze us. It can take us out at our knees. We can be lost in worrying about tomorrow and in dread thinking about yesterday. And meanwhile, we're missing this gift that we have in this moment of this very present day. Even when troubles multiply around me. Why let worry paralyze me when troubles multiply around me? I'd like to share just a quick story. It's another mom story. But my mom had chemo. She had breast cancer twice now. And her first round, or was it second? I think it was her first round of breast cancer. She had to have chemo. So chemo is ravaging to your body. I mean, it takes you out. It just, I can't, you guys know, there's so many out there that have gone through this. I'm not saying anything you don't know, but those that are blessed that don't know what chemo does to your body. I mean, everybody knows you lose your hair, but then there's the nausea in your skin and like it was just every part of her body took a beating from this chemo. And she had just had one chemo treatment, and she was absolutely on the couch, couldn't move, vomiting in a bucket, just a terrible, terrible time. And I would stay with her and just, make sure she was okay. And she looked at me with this tiredness in her eyes. Now, this is my mom, right? So she looks at me with this tiredness in her eyes, and she says, "Lisa, I don't know if it's worth it. I don't know if given the chance I would do this again." And I remember my breath caught in my throat, and I thought, "You're my mom. Damn it, you're supposed to want to live. What? What do you mean you don't know if it's worth it? How could life not be worth it? How could the grandkids, how could all of this not be worth it?" And I know in that moment that was my selfishness speaking, because I want my mom to be with me as long as I walk on this earth. But in that moment, I also sensed her absolute, that she was just tired and she was weary from the battle and she was exhausted and she didn't have any fight left in her. And I think in those moments, that's where we forget that there is somebody that is holding us. So I didn't say anything. I was a good daughter at some level, even though my spirit was crying, "No, Mom, don't even say that. You keep fighting." I let it go because it's not mine. It's not my mind to have an opinion on if it was worth it or not, because I'm just trying to help her. I'm not walking the walk that she's walking. So I went home and I remember I was just so upset and just like, just in a state of sort of like chaos in my soul, because not because I don't know what I was just, it's my mom, and you don't want anybody to hurt ever. And when your mom's hurting and when your mom's not feeling well to that extent, and you can't help it, what do you do? So just that desperation of, Lord, help me to help her. Help me to say the right words. Help me to be the daughter that I need to be in this moment. And so know the desperation that I'm feeling and the exhaustion that Mom's feeling, And I get this a text from my sister-in-law, and her son was going through classes in order to receive, I think, his first communion. And she had been walking through the church. She said she loved to walk through the church when nobody was there. And just in the quiet, she just found peace. So she was walking through the church, and there were statues in the church. And she was just sitting and reflecting upon the statues. And there was the statue of Jesus coming down off of the cross. And in Jesus's hand, there was a piece of paper. So Mary's holding him. And in Jesus's hand, there's this piece of paper. Hold on one second. Sorry about that. I wanted to go run and get my book. This story is in my book, so I wanted to make sure that I got it absolutely right, and I was true to the miracle that we had. So let me just read you the note from I'm with my mom. I'm desperate for how to help her. My mom's exhausted, and I'm on the computer, and I get this note from my sister-in-law that lives in New York. Now remember that I live in North Carolina, and my mom's name is Jeanette. So this is her note. Hey, I have to tell you something that happened last night, and I thought of your mom. We stopped into a church. I wanted to spend a moment looking at the statues. I like doing this because it's just so peaceful to be there when no one else is. We came upon the statue of Jesus laying down right where he was taken from the cross. In his hand, someone had placed a note. It read, "Please help Jeanette with her chemo." I read it over and over, and I truly believe in my heart that was for your mom. Please know that she's in my thoughts and my prayers. How beautiful is it that my mom's name was in the palm of her Savior? Not only was my mom's name in the palm of her Savior, my mom's name was in the palm of her Savior that was in the process of defeating death. In this statue, Jesus is taken right off of the cross, and Mary's holding him. In that moment, he is battling death and defeating death for 3 days. He went before my mom and defeated death before her and held her in the palm of his hand. My mom, who was so exhausted and so weary, me, who was so desperate to get her to feel better, this one miracle of just letting us know that he saw, he heard, and he went before us was just all that we both needed to get up and to fight again. I can't say to you enough that no matter what you're walking through, he knows. He knows. And he goes before you, and he makes a way. And him going before us did not mean that my mom's chemo was lessened. It did not mean that my mom's chemo was any less horrific and that she had chemo fog for a long time afterwards. It didn't take away all of that needed to get done to fight the cancer in her body, because my mom is a survivor twice now. It didn't take away what had to be done to fight in her body. But what it did do was let us know that he was already there. He had already walked it before us, and he was going before us, and he held my mom in the palm of his hand. Like, that's just staggering to me. So I want to read the psalm to you again. If you need to hear this message today, I want to read this to you again. Please just don't even pay attention to the drawing, because it's not even about that right now. Just let these words of life soak into your spirit. You stand silently to listen for the one that you love. You wait as long as it takes for the Lord to rescue you. God alone has become your Savior. He alone is your safe place. His wraparound presence will always protect you. He is your champion defender. I promise you there's no risk of failure with God. Why let worry paralyze you, even when the troubles multiply around you? For you're standing in the absolute stillness, silent before the one that you love. You're waiting as long as it takes for him to rescue you. Only God is your Savior, and he will not fail you. For he alone is your safe place. His wraparound presence will always protect you as your champion defender. There's no risk of failure with God. Why let worry paralyze you, even when troubles multiply around you? God's glory is all around you. His wraparound presence is all you need. For the Lord is your Savior, your hero, and your life-giving strength. Join me, everyone. Trust only in God every moment. Why don't you tell him all your troubles and pour out your heart longings to him? Believe me when I tell you, he will help you. God is saying to you right now, once and for all the strength and power you need flows from me. And again, if you listen, you'll hear it clearly said, all the love you need is found in me. and it's true. You repay people for what they do. So if those words are just seeping into your soul and they are just finding fertile purchase that you so desperately needed to hear this, if you don't have the Psalm 62 Passion Translation, you can go on to BibleGateway.com. I'll put the link below and just put in Psalm 62, and then in the drop down menu, pick down the Passion Translation. Say those words, read those words night and day to yourself to get yourself through it. Read those words and put your name in instead of where it just says me or I. Put your name into the psalm so that you know that those words are meant and intended for you. Just like there was a note in the palm of Jesus' hand in that church, this is the note in the palm of Jesus' hand for you today. Will you take the note? Will you read it? Will you let it find fertile purchase? Will you let it strengthen you and empower you in the fight that you're fighting? Because this is life-giving words meant for you today. Print it off. Read it night and day. Let these words become this wraparound presence that's all around you. That whenever you're walking out into the world, you know that He goes before you, He protects you, He cherishes you, and He's completely surrounding you. Front, back, top, bottom, His wraparound presence is all that you need. I hope that those words, help somebody out there today, because I know the desperation that I felt when I was with my mom. I know the desperation. My daughter had a terrible year last year, in a hospital here. She was overdosed twice in a hospital with 10 times too much medication, and the medical emergency that surrounded her for a year. We struggled to keep her alive, and she is. But I know that moment. I know the exhaustion. I know the feeling like, my gosh, I can't take another thing. You can, because He's got it. You don't. He holds you. You don't have to hold it. So I love you guys. Happy Thanksgiving. And I will see you next week on Psalm 63. Remember His wraparound presence. Bye, guys.